Hey, what's up? Exit the Matrix. Bob here. Just heading to work this morning, and hey, I wanted to do a video, basically talking about the origins of the major religions on Earth at the moment, and of course, you know the big three. Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Now, up front, I'm going to tell you, these religions are based on a mixture of Anunnaki worship and astrotheology. And that's it. You got a little bit of metaphysical teaching in there, pretty watered down and misleading and deceiving, though. But that's the truth. I've been binge listening to Jordan Maxwell the last few days, and essentially everything Jordan Maxwell teaches, and he breaks down all the symbols and what they mean in religion and the allegories and all of that. I mean, he has a masterful mind, and he was hated for it because he exposed religion for what it is, being part of the matrix, being part of the ruling, just another wing of the ruling class, the priest class, since the beginning, to control man and control our thoughts and our emotions and our faith. Essentially, I gotta admit, everything that Jordan Maxwell teaches essentially lines up with what I've been talking about. So I really, there was a few little differences that I disagree with him on, but overall, just most of it's spot on. Now, one thing he didn't really touch on a lot is the connection to the Sumerian deities, to the Nuna, as they were originally called, and later on the Anunnaki, and the fact that these highly advanced humanoids were the first worship gods on Earth. They established the first religions to basically worship themselves, to be worshipped. They ruled their own city-states, and their temple and palace was always in the middle of the city-state, typically on the mountain, which is what they called ziggurats back then. It was a man-made mountain. And of course their houses, their temples were on these ziggurats because pyramids are designed to amplify the ley lines and the power grid on Earth. When connected on these ley lines, pyramids can act as communication devices, energy devices, and open portals to other dimensions, to the spirit realm. So I did a video a couple days ago about Atlantis, and if you want to reference that, so I don't have to go over all that information again, I theorize that the Anunnaki did not come from outer space, that they weren't an alien race from, some other planet, Nibiru, like it's claimed, which really Nibiru it's you really can't find it in the Sumerian tablets. That was one of the things that Zecharia Sitchin was off on, and in my opinion. Some would maybe argue the other, the opposite on that, but in that video I talked about how the ruling elite, their top scientists, some of their top military, and royal class escaped the destruction of Atlantis, and they were the Anunnaki. They had flying devices, they had highly advanced technology, and they were who the Sumerians called the Anuna or the Anunnaki. They taught these nomadic peoples and these, primitive tribes how to build civilization. And that's alluded to in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Thoth, the Atlantean priest, he talks just about this, how they landed their ship in Kem, ancient Kem, pre-Egyptian, and he taught how he raised up Egypt from Kem and taught them. Now, he wasn't the only one that escaped the destruction of Atlantis. Understand this. And he was of royal bloodline. He was one of Enki's son. And Enki is one of the two major rival brothers in the Sumerian pantheon. Only leveled up by the father of all, Anu. He's their king of the Anunnaki, the Anuna. And Anu's other son, Enlil, also known as Yahweh in the Bible, was his rival brother. And Enki was the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Enki was the scientist. He was the brains behind a lot of the technologies on Earth. And of course, his son, Ningazida Thoth, was passed on that information. So anyways, check out that Atlantis video. I go over that. So essentially, the let's just say the Atlantis survivors, the royal class with their commanders and their scientists, and some of their priest class, escaped the destruction of Atlantis, and Mesopotamia was one of the main places they settled down in and started rebuilding civilization after the destruction of Atlantis, which possibly could have been the Great Flood. The pre-Diluvian world could have been ruled by Atlantis. It could have been a worldwide civilization, or at least they were a world power, but there were pockets of less civilized, sorry, getting caught up on that, tribes and peoples around the world, just like there are now. I know that sounds crazy. You're like, well, if they were world power, why did they have, know more about them and this and that? Well, look, there are tribes on Earth right now in Africa, in Papua New Guinea, in the Amazon forest. There's desert nomad tribes in Arabia. There's peoples in Southeast Asia, in deep parts of the Siberia, that still have little to no contact with with civilized humanity. At least what we would call civilized. In some ways, these people are much more civilized than we are, because they live simple, they eat simple, they love each other, they take care of community. And they don't need police, they don't need corrupt politicians, they don't need militaries. So it's funny, we always call them like primitive people, uncivilized, but let's be real. In many ways, they're better than us. But that's beside the point. So you got to understand that there are people like that now. And they actually, sometimes when advanced civilization like the United States sets up a base on one of their islands or something, and then we like during World War II, and we pick up shop and we leave, they worship the American soldiers and the commanders as gods, because they could not comprehend the technology. To them, it was magic. To them, it was spiritual power. They were gods compared to them, right? I mean, we had food, manna in cans and stuff. And they gave, canned food and stuff to some of these island tribes and stuff. And to them, it was like magical. Wow, there's this weird food in these cans. And, I mean, they're used to hunting and gathering and, fishing and stuff for their food. So they'd never seen anything like that. It was the food of the gods, right? I mean, it was seasoned, it tasted different than their food, and it seemed magical. So, not all of the Atlanteans wanted to be worshipped. Obviously, like the working class, the military class, like the soldiers, the Igigi, the Igigi, however you want to say it, in the Sumerian tablets, they were the working class Anunnaki, or the soldiers. They were the heroes. They were called heroes because they did basically all the work that the ruling class needed done. But even they were looked at as demigods to the tribes that they were building civilization with, that they were helping. They were the taskmasters. They were the military presence. They were they were subordinate to the royal families of the time. You always wonder why there's such a big deal about bloodline in the Old Testament. Well, yes, of course, your pastor's going to tell you it's because Cain's bloodline, was evil, and his bloodline was marked, and Adam's bloodline, was clean and pure. It was the bloodline for, the Messiah to be born into. But no, the reason why all this mattered was because the Anunnaki royals were rival families that were trying to protect their bloodlines. Just like today, you see royal bloodlines protected. They only would marry within their family bloodlines. And you see that with the chosen people, too. Which I'm not going to go into that because that's a massive can of worms. But those of you that know, you know. And those that don't, you're completely ignorant to what I even alluded to. So, you got to understand, too, that Genesis was completely taken from Sumerian cuneiform tablets that had creation myths on them. The Enuma Elish, the Atrahasis, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Enki and Ninmah creation of Adam. I mean, these are all ancient tablets written, at least carved on, marked on these tablets, thousands of years before the so-called Hebrew scribes or the Levites started writing their Torah. Thousands of years before Islam and Muhammad. Thousands of years before, let's say, the Roman Catholic character called Jesus Christ, okay? And no diss meant to Yeshua. So, these were all these religions were amalgamations, and they were stolen histories from these ancient sources of knowledge. And trust me, the Sumerian tablets and all that, I mean, that we're just lucky to even have those, because human history goes back hundreds of thousands of years. Like, we have lost all of that, or perhaps some of that knowledge is hidden in like the halls of Amenti and stuff, and secret vaults around the world that the Anunnaki, the Atlantean survivors protected some of that information. And perhaps one day, or perhaps it's already, some of them been found and it's being kept from us. That's probably more than likely the situation, because you know how controlled Egypt is, access and such. We have no clue what they've actually uncovered. They're not going to ever tell us, because we're in their matrix. Their religions control us. Zoroastrianism, same thing. Now, a lot of people allude to Judaism as being the first monotheistic God, complete rubbish. Complete rubbish. Zoroastrianism was there before Judaism. And the Zoroastrians believed in a one God, Ahura Mazda. But it just so happens that when you dig into Ahura Mazda, oh, surprise, it's the God Enlil, Yahweh. Not the Torah Yahweh. This is the Anunnaki Yahweh. You know, the God walking in the Garden of Eden, talking to Adam and Eve. The unseen God, right? Walking through the garden. Do you not get the... Do people not understand the disconnect in all this stuff? Elohim, come, let us make man in our image after our likeness. Us. Well, that's the Trinity that it's talking about. BS, people. The Christian version of the Trinity was nowhere in the Old Testament. You can twist and screw different verses together to try to get that, I guess, but it's BS. Nothing even close to that. But absolutely true is that all these religions came from Anunnaki worship, or I guess Christians would say angel worship. There's a reason why it always depicts the Anunnaki, the Anunna, as having wings. It didn't mean they actually had wings on their back. It's because they had the ability to fly. They probably had some kind of suit that was like a jetpack that allowed them to fly around. Because you got to understand, Atlantis was a massive, powerful, more advanced civilization than we are now. We're just starting to recover some of that information from the Akashic records to rebuild the same technologies. Some we're not even close on. They had way more efficient power devices than we have. They were able to power up their civilization through pyramids, through obelisks. And that's why those are so common in Egypt and some of the ancient cultures. Okay, another one that I haven't touched on yet that was founded on Anunnaki worship. Hinduism. The Hindu Vedic texts are all based on the same beings. The Anunnaki. These magical beings that had Vimanas, that were battling each other in the skies. Because remember, the Atlanteans were fighting over territory. When they spread out around the world, started building up civilizations, they rivaled their other factions, other families, other power groups from, Okay, look at it this way, guys. This is going to be a simple way of explaining this correlation. Let's assume that, I know the United States, we're pushing really hard at, starting World War III with Russia and Iran. We are pushing and pushing. I mean, our government are a bunch of psychopaths, and they're pushing as hard as they can. Now, let's say that it kicks off. Let's say they hit Russia, a base with a tactical nuke, or something. And then Russia starts firing nukes back. And next thing you know, China, Russia, Europe, America, we got nukes flying everywhere. The world's destroyed, right? Well, guess what's going to happen? The top scientists that work for the government, for the Pentagon, DARPA and such, the top religious leaders like the Pope and, these other clowns, bishops and such, and, and your government leaders and your royal families, they're going to be deep in bunkers, people. They're going to let us all die. Don't you get this? And then when that happens, they're going to emerge and they're going to start reestablishing civilization with the remnants that survive somehow. And once they start building up civilization, you got to understand, they're not going to be working together. Now all of a sudden they're rivals with each other. Because these people are psychopaths. They only work together when it's in their common goal. But as soon as they have the opportunity to get the upper hand on their friends, they become their enemies and they start battling each other. And do you understand what I'm saying here? So you're going to have new civilizations popping up all over the earth. And just like we have now, they're going to start battling each other because these assholes that rule the world, that rule our countries, these hand-picked leaders, they're psychopaths, and they love war. They love drawing the energy. That's how they sacrifice, is sacrificing your children to the war gods, to the Anunnaki gods. Do you not get this? This is how it works, people. This is the real world that you don't see. This is the real world that 90% of the sheep have no freaking clue about. Oh, they're just distracted with their football, their mixture pusher there for the Chiefs, and his witch girlfriend, because music's a type of witchcraft. If you're in the industry and you're using the symbols and certain sounds against people's minds, okay? This is part of the control system, is entertainment. There's a reason they say selling your soul to the industry. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. Forgive me, people. There's just, the spider web is so big, and my mind starts like grasping at different strands. And so another thing that gets tied into these religions is astrotheology. You got to understand, the original worship, even before the Anunnaki, the Atlanteans started spreading their new religions around the world of worship of themselves, the main worship was the sun. Not the S-O-N, the S-U-N. The Son of God. Yes. That sun is what most primitive tribes, even to this day, worship as a god. Because the sun is the life giver. The sun is your protector. There would be no life on earth if the sun didn't rise for, what they say, about 3 weeks, and the sun, and basically the earth would die off. Everything on earth owes its life to the sun. And that sun, a lot of cultures think that sun dies when it goes over the horizon, and then it is reborn. It comes back to life. It's resurrected every morning when that sun rises again. And with that sun comes life-giving energy, the energy that fuels all life on earth, plants, animals, and humans. That sun warms the environment. It warms people back up from the dark. It makes the animals that prowl and that are predators at night, it makes them go back into their dens, because a lot of your nighttime predators, they hunt at night because they don't want to be seen. You know, that's their instinct. That's their blueprint, their design to do that. So you got to realize in these thousands of years ago, there were a lot more predators on the earth than there are now. We've wiped out most of them. If you were caught outside of a village at night in the dark, without weapons and without being in a group of people, a good chance that a pack of wolves was going to pick you off, or a lion, or some other predator. But when that sun came out, all those predators went into hiding, right? So it was safe to move around. Now you could go out, you could, hunt and gather outside of the village. There's been a major deception done. See, the reason I said earlier about, I never equate Jesus to Yeshua. Yeshua was a true character, was a true person. And Yeshua was telling the truth when he said he was the Son of God and the Son of Man. Because we all are, people. We all are. And he was trying to teach that. He was trying to teach us how to awaken the Christ within, the Christos. But but your religion, your Pastor Dan tells you that, no, that's all BS. You have to wait for him to come and save you. And in fact, if you don't pray to him, guess what? You die. You burn in hell forever there, buddy. It's all BS. if you actually read the Nag Hammadi and a lot of the Gnostic writings and a lot of the Essene writings that were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, you'll actually find that Yeshua was just trying to teach universal love. He was trying to teach us that we are immortal, creative spirits connected to the creator of all, not to the God of this world. Everybody tries to say his father was Yahweh. Oh, so Enlil, the Anunnaki, the Atlantean, was his father? Perhaps that bloodline is in him. There could be a good chance of that. But no, that was a god. That was a man on earth masquerading as a god. But most of that... So what happened was, when the Roman Catholic... let's say, before, this was pre-Roman Catholic. This was when the Council of Nicaea was put together. You had the heads of state of Rome. You had the heads of the early churches. And believe it or not, you actually had top rabbis and stuff from the Judean faith all come together. And they compiled what you call the Bible. The New Testament we're talking about here. And they also tied in the Old Testament. But as far as Yeshua goes, yes, there was a lot of Yeshua's teachings in the Bible. But it's funny how the churches actually dissuade you from believing the most important things that Yeshua taught us. Like, don't you know ye are gods? That you don't need to go to a church, that the Father is within? Don't you know you can do as I can do, that you can heal, that you can move mountains, that you can do greater than I? If you tell that to a Christian, they'll say that's blasphemy. Nobody's greater than the Lord. People, you got to understand, what they did was, Rome was afraid of the uprising of these Christians. They were gaining power and momentum. They were becoming very popular. And they could not allow that. So what they did was, they took their gods, their worship of the sun. You know, they had the cult of Mithra. They had Sol Invictus. That was their sun gods. And of course Zeus, the lightning god, who's actually Enlil, Yahweh. And they took some Zoroastrianism and some Judaism and some Egyptian mythology and Sumerian. They took all these different things and they wrapped it up into a nice little package. And they created this character called Jesus the Christ. There was a trinity in the Hindu Vedic text that's thousands of years older. And, of course, Krishna, the Christ. Krishna, the Son of God. He was used as a template for this Jesus the Christ. And they rolled in sun worship into this too. And the true Yeshua had nothing to do with any of this. This was all written posthumously after him and his disciples were already dead. It was a controlled religion that made that Rome felt, the rulership of Rome felt, would give these peasants what they wanted. And they did it in a way that ensured their power and control over the people. And they put in some fear things in there too, because, hey, how do you control people? It's through fear, right? Oh, and make sure, give on to Caesar what is Caesar's, pay your taxes, you know? Tithing, pay the priest class. Because the priest class, they're one of the wings of the matrix. You got to understand this, people. For those of you that go sit in a church pew every Sunday and listen to Pastor Dan, and you'll sit there and explain one verse Charlie boy, and he'll sit there and tell you how that was part of his life and how it should inspire you and you should live by this verse. And it's funny how they never teach you about the Old Testament God hardly in church, is because when you start reading about the Old Testament God, you realize it's not only is it not the creator of all, not the source of all creation, but you'll realize that, wow, this is a psychopathic, creepy, power-hungry, jealous God, that is actually a Sumerian. He's based off a Sumerian god. So, for those of you that think I'm just spewing BS, I'm telling you, go take a deep dive into Jordan Maxwell. He does a much better job than I do as far as, I don't have the time right now. I could put this on paper and I could give it to you in a long-ass video, breaking everything down by symbolism. But go listen to some Jordan Maxwell, his talks on religion, symbolism, and it'll explain everything you need to know about what I'm just summarizing right now. So, anyways, guys, I'm at work here. I got to get in. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. And I'll talk to you later.